Hello Fragrances here. Today we're going to be doing a review on a fragrance from the house of Roja Diaghilev. This was a request by my good friend Larry in Ghana there. Roja seems to be his favorite house at the moment, and Diaghilev is one of his favorites. So today I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on Diaghilev by Roja. Before I do that, I want to thank you guys for all your support. We launched yesterday, Saturday the 16th, the brand launched officially, and then the website was up. Thank you for everybody that placed the orders yesterday and then today. So some people were lucky enough to get the tracking numbers yesterday because I was able to get some before the post office closed. But for the remainder of the people though, I have everything packed up and ready. First thing tomorrow morning, Monday, I'm gonna be dropping those to the post office, and you should be receiving a notification email with the tracking number attached to it. So thank you for your support. Thank you for everybody that is spreading the word there and supporting me. I can't thank you enough for making this come true. This is now a reality for me, and I'm really excited about that. Also, I want to thank everybody that showed interest internationally and has reached out to try to figure out if I was able to ship that internationally. The issue is at the moment though, the pricing is kind of high, not worthwhile in my opinion. I had people from Europe asking about shipping, and then also for example in Saudi Arabia, when I was looking at the code though, for example for Saudi Arabia, the code came back around $80 even after the discount that the carrier was offering, which is more than half of the highest price item or fragrance in my brand here. So that's kind of a little bit ridiculous there. So I'm trying to find ways to make it much more affordable and worthwhile. For Europe, for example, a sample set was about $35. Last time I checked with the actual address to France, for example, was $35 just to ship a sample. The sample set is $30, so much more expensive than the price of a sample set. So I'm trying to find ways to get a better shipping rate there, and I'll keep you guys informed. So, but thank you for your interest in reaching out and asking me about the international shipping. So back to the review here, Diaghilev presentation. You have this cubic glass bottle, and then you have the metal plaque at the front, and then at the top you have a black crystal cap. So really elegant, luxurious feel to the fragrance. That's what he's going for, at least the brand strategy here. Now a little bit of background here. Diaghilev was created by the house of Roja Diaghilev to kind of honor Sergei Diaghilev, who's the founder of the company called Ballet Russe, which translates to Russian ballet, and he used to be really creative and influential in that space or industry there. Now rumor has it that he used to spray the curtains of the theater with fragrances to kind of hype the crew at the beginning of each performance. A perfect example of fragrance as a mood lifter here. So one thing that was mentioned when I was reading about him is that he loved Mitsuko by the House of Guerlain. So stopping at this stage here, you can already imply that Diaghilev is an inspiration or is inspired by Mitsuko from the House of Guerlain. If you take it one step further though, and then you contrast Diaghilev and then Mitsuko, which I've done here, I used the extract version in this beautiful flacon here with an inverse heart-shaped stopper, and then the eau de toilette in these packages here or bottle style here. And then I can definitely see the influence of Mitsuko in Diaghilev. I can see that Diaghilev is inspired by the basic shipper structure of Mitsuko, but also some of the facets that makes Mitsuko what it is. So for example, the floral, fruity facets that I get from Mitsuko are represented here. But to me, when you take these two, they're not interchangeable though. Diaghilev takes that basic shipper structure along with the facets that makes Mitsuko what it is, and then takes it on a darker path. So for example, although you get floral and then slightly peachy fruity nuances, those are kind of swallowed up by the animalic, mossy, inky, woody leather theme that is dominant in Diaghilev. So that's one of the major differences, darker tone here from Diaghilev versus something that is regal, easy to wear from Mitsuko here. In Mitsuko, depending on the versions that I have here, I've not tried like a really vintage version to know that that contains a lot of animalic facets, but in the versions that I have, the extract version and then the eau de toilette in the presentation that I just showed, I don't detect quite a lot of animalics in there. There are more heightened with the florals and then the slightly fruity tones. And then one additional thing that I get from Mitsuko in the versions that I have here that I don't get in Diaghilev that is pronounced is a set of violet irisy and then cedar-like tones that I get in the dry down. The floral facet are a little bit more pronounced. The peachy vibe, fruity vibe is a lot more pronounced in Mitsuko when I compare it to Diaghilev, where the dominant present accord is that animalic, mossy, musky, woody leather tone. And then you get the floral elements and then the peachy-like elements, but they're kind of supporting, or let's say they're infused in the animalic theme accord that I just mentioned, versus being there like in Mitsuko. So they're not as pronounced as what I get out of Mitsuko. So essentially, Diaghilev is a darker, bolder interpretation of what you get out of Mitsuko here, and then they satisfy, like I said, different types of moods, so they're not interchangeable. I would say Diaghilev is a really good spin-off of Mitsuko. And one that is overpriced in my opinion, but again, product positioning. As the owner of the brand, you decide what brand strategy you want to employ here. And then clearly for Roja Dove, he's going after luxury market, luxury clientele there, so I can't blame him for that. For people that are interested in those type of product, luxury product, of course, they're not only focusing or trying to pay only for the quality or the cost of the ingredients. You have to think about the stores, how beautiful it is. You have to talk about the personnel that you're hiring to give you that quality or reflect that brand image, advertising and all that. So you're paying for all that. You're not just paying for the quality of the ingredients. So I can understand his product strategy or positioning here, and I don't blame him for that. Now, I see that he's also trying to capture the mid-tier. Now they consider it mid-tier pricing, above like $200 US dollar, with what is it called? The Parfum Cologne line that he just released, and also Elysium as well, that are priced around the 200 to 300 mark here. With all the niche like brands coming out with out of the gate high prices, it is kind of difficult to kind of assess fragrances based on the pricing alone. And then now 200 seems affordable when you think about niche fragrances. But anyways, I'm kind of diverging on the review here. But these are luxury items, but I think this one is overpriced, but I think it is a fantastic composition. Now on to what I get out of the fragrance here. This one is not a new concept, like again I said, inspired by Mitsuko in my opinion here, but the quality of the ingredient that is using here, beyond the basic structure of the shipper and then the facet, floral fruity facets that he's getting from Mitsuko, is the way that he's been able to beef it up, make it bold, but to retain that balance in it as well. There's also the peekaboo facets, the like shimmering facets that I get throughout the wearing the fragrance, coming here and there, and then blending so well in the overall core shipper structure that makes this one really worthwhile. Now in the opening, what I get is just this wonderful citrusy, comes off as a citrusy blast in the opening, and is soft and then fizzy and then really refined. Now if you don't pay much attention in the opening though, you're just gonna get like a complex, some type of complex citrusy like vibe. Like a vague impression of citrus. But if you look closely though, and then you wear this one several times, you're gonna see that the opening is really actually well done and is genius. Now the opening, he uses bergamot, a little bit of lime, but he uses also an inky, slightly tangy blackcurrant paired with a dark green woody vetiver. Now what that does to the citrus is just add this extra layer of something that is slightly sulfuric, but also slightly animalic, but not quite. But it adds depth to the citrusy bergamot and then lime opening, along with the vetiver being a dark, bitter, woody green accord here. Now that's the opening, really beautiful citrus opening, with an added layer of complexity coming from the blackcurrant, but also the vetiver. Now the blackcurrant and the vetiver, you gotta take that in mind and then prolong it into the dry down, because what it does here, it adds this inky accord to the mossy vibe in the dry down is just beautiful. It just adds this expansive feel to the mossy aura that you get in the dry down. Now the citrusy opening there, just there for like about 30 minutes, and it announces something that is dark, sensual, animalic in the dry down for the remainder of the fragrance. Now what I get out of that though, before the animalic facet comes in, I get slightly sweet facets that are balancing that citrus complex note, and it's coming from a set of florals. I get a little bit of jasmine, a little bit of ylang. I think there's a little bit of tuberose as well, but also a slight peachy vibe that is added there. It's kind of balancing and adding dimension again to that citrusy opening and contrasting again against that inky, slightly tangy blackcurrant and then vetiver combo that are like supplementing the citruses. So that's what you get for the first 30 minutes with the floral and then the slightly fruity elements giving dimension to the opening, but also announcing gradually, not in the brutal way, the animalic facet is going to remain like that after about an hour. It's going to be mostly centered around that animalic shipper-like facet, and it's going to be dominantly around like a mossy, woody, inky moss, but also woody leather. Around that, you're also going to get slightly like Inon-like vibe attached to it, but it's not going to come off like irisy or anything. It's just adding that slightly powdery touch to the musky, inky, mossy leather. Now, as it evolves though, it gets drier and drier. When you contrast it with the opening is actually fizzy and then slightly fresh. And then as you go along though, the journey of wearing the fragrance though, it gets drier and drier. Now the facets that make the animalic tone here or theme here really interesting is the use of styrax, which has animalic but also leathery tones. Castoreum also has leathery elements and is slightly animalic as well. Actually it is animalic when you smell it 100%, so depending on the dosage here. So styrax, castoreum, a little bit of civet for a little bit of sensual warm skin tone attached to it, but also a little bit of labdanum and then some resins that are giving weight to the fragrance, and it's going to give you this beautiful musky, woody, inky, mossy leather tone, and then slightly resinous sweet feel in the background. Another set of accords or facet that kind of complements and heightens that animalic leather off of the core of shipper from Diaghilev is actually spices, and I don't get a lot of that in the Mitsuko, at least the versions that I have here, the EDT and then the extra version. I don't get a lot of spices out of Mitsuko, but in Diaghilev I do get a lot of spices. I get a lot of cloves, spicy cloves, and a little bit of cumin, adding a little bit dirty edge to it, but it's hidden behind the styrax and then the castoreums, which are already dirty in nature and animalic in nature, but it adds this extra layer of complexity to the animalic feel that I get out of Diaghilev, and that's one of the main differentiators to when I compare it to Mitsuko. It goes without saying that this one is a complex fragrance, and then beyond the quality of the ingredients that are around the core shipper structure, and then also the lovely other facets, fruity, floral, spicy facet that I mentioned, is the oneness that I get out of the fragrance when I wear it while retaining the level of complexity, the perceived complexity that I get out of it while remaining like a one coherent fragrance is what makes this fragrance really work. Now in terms of performance, this one works really well. It is bold and grand for the first 2 hours, and after that it is receding close to the skin, but you can still smell it on you easily, but it's not going to be a projecting beast, at least from our bottle. That's not what I get. But usually, typically though, with how bold this fragrance is, I usually go 2 to 3 sprays max, and I get this beautiful scent bubble around me. So I would say performance is good on Diaghilev. Although I love this fragrance and I'm raving about it here, it is worth noting the drawbacks of this fragrance and then give you a little bit of idea of who might enjoy this fragrance. Now, if you don't love shipper fragrances, you don't love animalic fragrances, you're into type of freshies, you're not gonna enjoy this one. If you don't love bold fragrances, this one might be a little bit too much for you. So I would say like dismiss it, or maybe sample it to have a reference when people are talking about Diaghilev. Now in terms of seasonality, I never wear this one during summer because in the high heat last time I tried this one, it was too much for me. The animalic notes were too pronounced on my skin, so I don't wear that during high heat or summer. only during the cooler season and only during situations where I want to go for like a formal event, a dinner, and I want an imposing or bold or unique type of approach to a scent aura to me. But I would say, depending on what you're looking for, Diaghilev will be like a statement fragrance, limited use there. So you have to keep that in mind. If you're paying that much money and then you're not using it that much, is it worth it? So you have to decide that for yourself. If you want something that is more versatile and not as dark, look into Mitsuko.